All right. All right, we're going to go and get started right now. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I am Naimisha, founder and creator of Products by Women. Again, we're all here to debunk some myths about product management. There are so many different theories about product management, how to get into it, how to get out of it. Not really, but yeah, so let's talk about that. And before we do get started, just some housekeeping tips. First of all, I really want to thank Angela and General Assembly for partnering with us for this amazing event. We had one last week, and we're going to continue having some incredible sessions, so keep an eye out for that. And Angela, I would love for you to say a few words before we share more information about housekeeping.
Yeah, of course. Can y'all see my slide okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So yes, as Naimisha has beautifully said, we've been partnering together to bring you many event series together related to, being women in product, as you can see on the screen. So we're super honored and excited to be here as a partner for Products by Women and to have a conversation on debunking product myth. And I'm really excited to have our awesome guest speakers with us to uncover all those insights. But very quickly, in case you have not heard of GA before, we are a global tech and business school, and we have about 30 campuses around the world. Most of us are still virtual, but a couple campuses in the US will be reopening soon in person. But yeah, our biggest mission is to help individuals get into the career that they want to pursue. And so we offer free events like this, along with workshops and part-time, full-time courses in the subjects that you see on the screen right now. So that includes design, data, coding, business, which of course falls under the niche of product marketing, and last but not least, career development. So if you're curious about how you can learn with GA and get more involved with us, I'll be sharing a follow-up communication at the end of the week, along with the recording, and so will Naimisha, so that way you can keep in touch with us. And then one little plug I want to share too is that we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary right now. So we're giving 10% off our part-time courses for 1 week, specifically in evening courses, but you must enroll by the end of the month. So again, if you're curious about this, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be dropping my LinkedIn. And then other exciting things in terms of upcoming workshops, along with a 50% off code, is that we do offer boot camps, as some of you may know. But yeah, these are just some of the additional options in terms of what GA offers. And some meeting norms. This, as you know, is being recorded, and we'll be sharing it out at the end of the week. And as Naimisha mentioned, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and follow us and share your experience with us at General Assembly and at Products by Women. And that is it, my friends. Thank you for having me, and I'm really excited to hear the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angela. And I feel like Angela has covered all my housekeeping, so I really don't have anything much to share, except that we do have a bunch of collaboration opportunities. If you'd like to speak at an upcoming event, or you'd like to conduct a workshop, do feel free to reach out to us. We also have other opportunities like having your story shared. So yeah, we have, feel free to reach out to us, info@Products by Women. With that, I'd love to pass the stage to Shrinedhi and Synth to kind of do a quick introduction and take it away from here. Shrinedhi and Synth, over to you guys.
Thanks for the introduction, both of you. It was really nice, and I hope the audience learn more about our community. Hello, Synth. Nice meeting you. We have been meeting in many communities. How are you? Just tell us more about you. You want to get started?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Synth. I'm one of the product managers at Modus. And Modus is a digital studio building products for our clients. And prior to Modus, I worked in nonprofits and e-commerce and innovation labs. Right now, I've been really passionate and focused on building 0-1 products. I'm just really in love with working in the discovery space, identifying the problems and user pain points and their needs, and trying to turn them into business opportunities. Right now, I'm managing a fintech product that helps old Americans age and seek financial freedom. Yeah, and so far it's been really fun. And I always wanted to get to know Shrinedhi and see like what was PointsBet's product about, and also kind of like which product verticals do you manage?
Yeah, sure. So hello, everyone. I'm Shrinedhi Rajan. I'm also working as a product manager. I work with a company called PointsBet in the sports betting industry, where I primarily work on product growth, taking my product to both domestic and international markets. And I come from a software engineering background where I previously worked with a fintech called Standard Chartered. So with that mindset, I also want to continue my software engineering space in the product management opportunity as well. So I'm also focusing on building internal tools to serve our customers better. So those are primarily the two focus areas in my job. And one thing that I like about this opportunity is that I try to bring in more social responsibility to the companies that I'm working in. So the initiatives that I take, the features, the products that I build in mainly focus on social responsibility within the company. So that's my niche area, I would say. And apart from my full time, I'm with this community products by women as a chapter lead. So that's going great. I get a lot of opportunities like this to interact with people like you. So that's what I'm doing. And one other note is I'm just interested in healthcare space. So I'm just working with a startup as a side project to bring in more mental health awareness to the people across the globe. So that's about me.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's so interesting how you're building products and for social good. What would be an example of like a social good that you've kind of helped succeed in your role right now?
Oh, that's a nice question to start with. So as you said, I work in the sports betting industry, which is a gambling industry. And most of the cases, there is a negative connotation associated with it because it brings in gambling. So what I focus on is responsible self-gambling. So I build features where the users can just set a limit on the deposit, the time they spend, the money they spend on our application, take sufficient breaks, and have that safe space where they can use our website just for the sake of entertainment and not just addiction. So that's one of the areas that I brought in, and it's been going great. So I would say that's the most recent impact that I've created in social responsibility at my place.
Okay, that's really cool. Often I get like messages from LinkedIn, and I think you do as well. People asking us like, you know, our product managers like the CEO of the product. I just kind of wanted to hear your experience so far that you have in your role and prior to your role about that myth.
Right. So I think that's definitely the first myth that we should debunk. So talking about if product managers are the CEOs of the product, I have mixed answers. One, yes, because in some cases, PMs drive the strategy, they set the roadmap, they align their goals with the organizational strategy vision. They are the leaders who are responsible for the product success, right? So in that way, yes, but there's a strong no as well, because you are not the direct authority over the resources, not the budget or any P&L responsibilities. So that's where I think the product management opportunity becomes more challenging. You have to do the work, but without the direct influence or authority, I would say. And one contrasting difference that I find between the execution side and the product side is CEOs, not just CEOs, everyone under the execution ladder focus primarily on business growth. So be it sales, procurement, logistics, operations, anything, they just focus on expanding the business to new areas, new niche markets, or new customer segments, and so on. But product also impacts the business growth, but customer is the one that you put in front and use the customer's needs, solving those customers' needs in order to add value to business. So I think that's a bit of a mix of both execution, product thinking, strategy, and you do not own the product completely. You just do a mix of all these things to get the right product or right feature out to your customer. So you focus more on customer need rather than the business focus. So I think that is my thought, and this is definitely a contradictory topic. So I would love to hear your thoughts on, do you think product managers are CEOs of the product?
I would say no, based on my experience. And I think there's also like a positive to that no, especially if you really love managing products and building products and growing products, because you're really advocating for the user, but you're also trying to grow the business with these products, right?
Right.
So I think that's really neat. And also the whole creativity of working with different teams to make sure that has been resolved or the problems are being solved. So I would say it is definitely, we are not the CEO of the products. And it's mostly because I still need a lot of inputs from other people to sometimes make the right decisions, right? I could never, be in a position to make all the decisions by myself without any stakeholders involved, whether it's a development lead or a design lead or even the sales team. So there's always that. Whereas I think a CEO could do that because he has that power to make that decision and also justify that why he made this, or he doesn't even have to, which is the interesting part. So I think that's definitely a big myth. And although you do make a lot of decisions during the day, it's definitely not to the point where you are the CEO, I would say.
Yeah, that's a very good point, which also just takes me to this point where do you think product managers are, you collaborate with multiple teams, you make the decisions, but do you think PMs are the sole decision makers, or how does that work in your org? How does the segregation happen? Because I think this is something that every aspiring PM should understand. Which level of decision making that do you contribute to? Where do you fit in? Or how does that impact the overall strategy and the goals of your company? So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think I've by nature also, and also my personality and work style, I've always been a collaborator. So, there are moments when I think deeply about a problem and I use data to understand the problem. And then I have my own opinions about how to solve the problem. But I might share that with my team, or, not even share them, but ask them how they would solve the problem. And then maybe we collaborate that way, for example. So, going back to your question, I would never say the sole decision maker. There are times when people do come to me if they can't solve it, and they ask me how to solve it. And I think that's because they expect me to make that last approval or that final call. And that's when it's still like, I still use data. I still consult with, one person, if not like, thinking clearly in my head, just all these reasons to back up my decision. But most of the time, 90% or 95% of the time, I would say I'm not really the type of person that makes the sole decision. It's always a collaboration with data and the team to make the right decision. What about you? Like how does your day and also like your journey as a product manager have you been in a position to solely make all the decisions or expected to?
I agree with you most of the part. So we talk to stakeholders, they have a say in our decision. But I would call a PM as a final decision maker and not a sole decision maker. By final decision maker, I mean, it's the duty of the product manager to, I agree with you that we have to bring in sufficient data, insights to back the claims that we make. But if there are multiple parties, like someone from marketing, sales, customer support, there are multiple requests coming in, it's the PM that sets the order to the chaos, saying, this is what the company's or our current team's goal is. These are the priority lists. This is how I'm going to do. And this is where I'm going to say no. So I think PM is where that's the red card holder. So you bring in the final decisions, but you always have to support your claims with necessary data, backing, and insights. And one other thing that I also think is how the PMs approach this varies across different companies and the goals, the growth models of the companies, right? So our company currently follows a product-led growth, which is currently the buzzword everywhere. Every company is trying to accomplish or go towards product-led growth. So one advantage that I've seen here is, irrespective of my CMO, CPO, CEO, anyone asking that, it goes through a proper product funnel where we evaluate, analyze each of those requests, validate how it impacts our customers, and then bring it in. Not because someone of authority brought that or some sales team requested that feature. So this is possible only because our company is leaning towards a product-led growth, but certain companies, maybe like Salesforce, have a sales-led growth because they work towards solving the need of the biggest client that they have. There is also a marketing-led growth where they care about the acquisition rather than just the activation, retention side of things. So I also think the level of influence that a product manager has on decision making depends on which growth model the company follows. So that's what I understand in the early stages of my career. I think I'll just learn more, explore a lot more when I just go in further in my career. So yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. The culture does influence this responsibility that we take in to make decisions, right? So it's a really good point. I think it's mostly also, I work in a digital studio, so there's several products that I'm managing, and it depends on the client that I work with, also their own understanding of how product management work. So there's always a mixture, but I do like what you said, where we are the final approved decision makers, not the sole decision makers. And I think that's very important. Yeah, but it's definitely varies wherever product you manage or the actual culture that you're in.
Yeah.
Has a big influence.
Yeah. Shoot me in. What other myths do you want to bust today?
I mean, because staying on theme, I would probably say I often get asked, like, you know, like how does product management varies across companies?
Okay.
It's been a very mouthful answer to answer that, either through LinkedIn sometimes as a message to someone, or even on any of the social channels. Because it's like a long paragraph that I have to say, right? So what is your response when people, like, the myth is like, oh, is product management a one size fits all? How does it vary in different companies?
Yeah, before I get into the answer, just a tip. What I do if someone asks me that question is, I'm just too lazy to type out. I just give my contact email or someone, let's just hop on a call. We'll just discuss this too, because it definitely covers a lot of areas and it's a lot to type in. So that's definitely a good point that you brought up. It's definitely a mouthful. So I think I already have a handful of reasons. One is the level of ownership varies across not just the industries, but across the company sizes as well. So I've worked in both established fintech companies or startups like PointsBet. So what I've seen as a difference is, so in my current workplace, I get to own the end-to-end of the product or the feature that I'm working in. So starting from discoverability, working on A/B test, execution, getting it out after product launch, everything. So the end-to-end is possible because I work in a startup or a mid-sized company. But in my previous workplace with Standard Chartered, where one change could just impact millions of users, that was a bit hard because it had a lot of processes in place, approvals in place, and before you get something out or make a decision on something, it'll just be weeks before you get it out. So I think the level of ownership is definitely one strong difference across different companies, and whoever is moving to product should definitely take this into consideration. Do you want to just focus on one area, build expertise in this, then big tech is definitely your area. But if you're someone who wants to explore what other aspects are there in product management, you're still trying to explore which area you fit in, then startups are definitely one good place. And one other key difference that I've noticed is between software and hardware industries. I think the company culture, the way you operate, how fast you get your idea or something executed varies very differently from both software and hardware. So every time when I say this, one example that I give is Facebook as an application just sends out thousands of code updates every day. They make so many feature updates, but their hardware part just sends an update every 1 year or 5 years. A lot of thinking goes in there, but the period after which you get an update is significantly higher. So that's the difference between software and hardware within the same company. So that is something that we have to put some thought into. Where do you want to go? Do you want to just do a work, wait, and then see the impact, or just have immediate quick validations in your job? So I can go on and on, but I'll just take a pause. I want to know what you think, because you said you work on fintech. So were you always in fintech, or were you in different industries, different backgrounds? How did it vary across those?
Yeah, I think it's because Modus is a digital studio. There's various verticals that we get to work on. Yeah. There's fintech, there's education, there's e-commerce. So it depends on, you know, like the project that you're going to be placed in. And sometimes if it's also a long-term project, you're going to be there for like 3 years versus like a year. So in terms of like how projects to projects varies, I think it's also who's also on the team of those projects. So, you know, in this scenario with the fintech product, it's a big team that's on it. There's a lot of there's like 2 squads, like a squad, like Spotify squad model, if you can think of that. There's 2 scrum teams, 1 product manager, myself, and I have several like 2 or 3 business analysts who are also like product owners as well. And there's designers as well and research teams. So it's kind of like the way we build products from ideation to launch. It's from discovery to launch. It's also like working together with research and design at the very front of the funnel, and then trying to flesh out what we're trying to solve and and validating that through A/B testing or user research. And then from there, you know, we start to run some experiments, and that's something that I usually like to do. And then that's just kind of like testing out whether it moves this metric or this metric. And then once that's like, you know, a really good experiment where we have good numbers, then there's moments where, you know, we should build the thing, and we should build the smallest thing, which is usually the MVP. And that's the expectation is that, you know, I usually say the what and why we're building it. And then the business analysts or the product owners would figure out the why, the how we're building that with the what and why that I provided. So whether that's writing the stories, writing the acceptance criteria, making sure the designs match the user flows that were, and then passing it on to the development team and building it, and then also improving that, so in that case, the handoff or the way we collaborate is very different from a startup PM who would probably do everything from end to end. Most of the times you don't even have a researcher who would help them validate the problems. So maybe they're doing market research one day, they might be talking to a user another day. So I think it does vary, and also the responsibilities depending on the size of the team and also how big the product is,
I agree. And I think one other point that I noticed here is, even though both of us are product managers, I take up the responsibility of both the product manager and product owner, where you had proper segregations on, you just focus on what and why and not on implementing the stories, writing the stories for the engineers to pick up. So I think, just between the 2 of us, there's a lot of difference in the way we operate, how our company operates. So that's definitely nice. And one thing that I wanted to point out is you juggle a lot of things, right? So instead of calling us a CEO, we can just be jugglers of multiple things in the product, because that name makes more sense. So how do you just try to fit in between 9 to 5? How do you maintain a work-life balance, and how do you handle that part?
Honestly, I don't have a work-life balance. I'm trying to have one. I think, you know, the whole juggling around scenario picture makes sense as like an analogy of what the actual role is. And also at the same time, sometimes there's so many stakeholders to please. And you know, even though you're trying to juggle all the balls in the right direction, you know, you can't be perfect, right? And I think that's been the biggest learning curve, is, you know, trying not to please everyone, but also doing the right thing. So the 9 to 5 is definitely more, it's easier said than done. Of course, everyone would probably advise like block your calendar, make sure you have your downtime, but there's moments where you do get interrupted because, you know, you have to help unblock someone with whatever they need, whether it's research, design, or a decision that needs to be made, or a clarification question for developers, for example, So I think it's it also varies in the company to company as well. right? To have the 9 to 5, maybe
Right.
they have like, certain release cycles that are different for their
Right.
product teams. Maybe they expect to just have certain like 1 or 2 business goals for that team versus 5 or 6, right? So
Right.
and depending on all of that, you can see how busy you can be. And sometimes even remember Namisha saying that she had to do some QA work when her QA was out for vacation. And that was like, that just goes to the whole 9 to 5 conversation. Even though your calendar's blocked or you're dedicated to doing this on your calendar, it might not be the case, right? So I'm still being very inspired by all the other leaders in the space trying to make it to doing it 9 to 5. I don't think I'm there yet. I do think there's a lot of responsibilities expected for this role. Even at a mid-level PM, for example, right?
Right.
So what are your experience? Are you always like trying to do the 9 to 5? I know it's healthy and it's more sustainable, but what's been your experience so far?
I'm also a work in progress, I would say. So like 5-6 months back, I really had a bad work-life balance because I'm currently in Jersey, which is Eastern EST time, but my teammates are in Australia. So they just wake up when I end the day. So I have my stand-ups now like 6:30 in the evening. So most of my work is done after 5:36. So what I usually used to do was from 9 to like 3-4, I used to catch up with both the teams that are in the US and then plan my day in the evening for Australia team. But as I said previously, I had a very shitty work-life balance. I realized that. And one thing that I felt was when I was juggling between multiple things, there were too many things on my plate. I didn't know which one to pick up. That in turn, I felt it impacted the quality of my prioritization, the work or the focus, the concentration that I gave on each of the projects. So that's when I realized, yes, I'm going to face some burnout here. These are the symptoms of it. Let me just take a pause, set things back to the schedule, and then stick on to my work-life balance. So I don't have a 9 to 5 per se now, but most of the days I just plan one day at least in advance, so that if a call goes till 8 or 9 p.m. in the evening, I just make sure to start late in the morning. I have my time or personal time more in the morning so that I can just extend a bit in the evening. And that has definitely played or created a significant impact on the quality that I deal with people. Because as a product manager, you already have to lead with a lot of things. And if you have multiple projects, the context, which is really important, because you have to answer multiple questions to multiple people, be it stakeholders, developers, edge cases for QAs. So it's really important you stay focused, take sufficient breaks, and so on. But irrespective of doing all that, you have to be always available on Slack for clarification questions, any business issues, you have to be there. But yeah, I'm just trying to extend or start early depending on how the schedule looks in the previous day. So that's what I've been doing.
I think that's really smart, just to kind of block off the time and, give yourself some grace to focus on yourself. Right. I think the biggest strategy I've, try to follow to make it a bit more sustainable, like for the role. Right. I know it's not going to be ever 9 to 5, but it's just to kind of, prioritize what I actually think I should do and how much this work could actually make or break the company more money, or whatever the case is. So that's always saving time, for example, or whatever the metric or variable I want to target hit, and then that keeps me kind of in staying, right? Like, I can't do all of these 5 things today, but maybe I could do the top 3 because that will help us move forward with this, or it'll bring impact that way. So I think that's very important to do, is to not do everything, but to do the most important things, just so you could have that somewhat 9 to 5.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So one other difficulty that I faced was I have my Slack alerts on my mobile even after work hours, because if there is a production issue or somewhere I have to jump in, I should be notified, right? So I get notifications of everything. So what I started doing was I go through the messages, but if I think it's urgent, immediate, or it's a production issue, and that's when I jump in. If not, I like this new feature of Slack where we can just schedule it tomorrow morning to reply. So I just let's it remind me the next day, so that as soon as I come back in the morning, I just focus on those things rather than just spending my personal time on non-essential things. So that is one hack that has been helping me for a while now. So you should try it out if your company uses Slack as well.
Well, I don't have Slack on my phone.
That's nice.
So that I actually try to have like, social other stuff outside of work.
Nice.
I used to, and I think that was a very bad move because I would be reactive and I wouldn't, think about stuff. So, but now everything's on desktop and, I just kind of reply and engage messages accordingly. But I should try that feature that's on Slack. I didn't know that they had it. Okay, that's real cool.
Yeah.
So I know like also people always ping me and asking me like, do product managers have to be technical? Do they have to have a CS degree? Especially the ladies who don't have a CS degree, they're always asking me if that's like a make or break deal. What are your thoughts about that?
I don't have a CS degree per se, but as I said, I have a software engineering background. So I have a variety of background actually. I did my bachelor's in electrical and electronics, took a few CS courses, moved to software engineering, and that's when I also figured there is a product management role, and then moved to product management. So I'm just a mix of different pieces. So to your question on if a product manager has to be technical, I would not say you have to be technical to be successful. It's because as a product manager, you must have the ability to understand and talk in the language of all the people that you're talking with. If you're talking to a marketing person or if you're talking to a customer support person, you should use the right terms that make sense to them. If you use some engineering terms to them, it will not add value to both. You'll not realize the impact. So it's always important for a product manager to understand your audience and speak the language of your audience. And I think that is applicable to the engineers as well. When you talk to the engineers, think about the logic rather than how it is implemented. What are they implementing? What is the value it causes to the business? If something goes wrong, how does it impact the end user? So just focus on what goes in and what you get out rather than how they handle the in and out of it. So I think that's really helpful for a product manager to succeed, because irrespective of you having the technical background, you can understand, speak their language, think about those edge cases and the logics that I have implemented. So that would in turn contribute not just to the software development situations, but also the automated testing scenarios. So that's where you can contribute even if you don't have the technical knowledge. And I would say the pros of having a technical background is you can easily understand what they're talking about. If there's a gap, you can jump in. But oftentimes there is always a tech lead who can just jump in and solve those technical issues. That's not what a product manager is for. So you need not worry about it. And one advantage of not having a technical background, I would say, is, so I moved from software engineering to product, right? So as a software engineer, I used to constantly think about solutions. So initially when my product manager reached out to me for a problem statement, I would immediately put on my solution hat and start thinking about what are the different ways that I could solve that problem. So that's the mentality you have if you have a technical background. So when I moved to product, when I get a problem, instead of diving in deep into the problem, I used to immediately shift my focus on solution. So that took me a couple of months to change my mindset from a solution mindset to a product mindset. No, I should just focus on problem, not on the solution. That is something that you can avoid if you don't have the technical background, because innately you'll just focus on solving the problem or understanding the problem more rather than how do you solve it. So I think not having a technical background, but the ability to understand or contribute to the discussions that engineers, marketing, everyone is having is definitely important. So I think you have a CS background, right?
Yeah. So
how is that helping you?
I mean, it did help me, like, at early stage, like write really good user stories, like to the, to be able to talk to the team in a confident manner, to help, to just even relate to estimating the story points, it's kind of like what I would estimate. It would be super close to what they would. Maybe sometimes it was off, especially if it was like a back-end thing, because I didn't work on back-end stuff. But so I think there was advantage in that way to influence without authority for that stakeholder, which was the tech team, because I would be able to write the stories in a way where it was understandable, it was easy to read, it was simple. But I think what was really, a good key thing that I started doing as a habit was to write them from a user's perspective. And to share them that, hey, we're not just building a drop-down menu, we're actually trying to build a drop-down menu that, allows them to reach to this destination or this destination, to help them save more money or help them budget better. So those are a lot of the stories that I would be able to tell during the grooming session, and as well as the planning, and that would build some sort of like, empathy that what we were trying to build was actually solving a problem for the user, and hoping that that'll map to the business. But that was something that was a lot easier for me to do because of my background, right? It's not like it's not impossible. I think everyone could learn it and write really good user stories, or collaborate with the team a little bit more confidently, especially if you can simplify things as well. Because I think, the tech team sometimes really want to go after a certain solution. And that's when you try to kind of put your product hat on and see things in different perspectives. Like maybe you could solve it this way or solve it that way. Whatever the case is, you kind of like talk about it. So, but it's not awkward. But I think it's also very important, even with that background, you can take the advantage sometimes where I feel like a lot of PMs, it's not their fault, but by default, because they have a CS background, that they're like super into the solution, right? Yeah. And then they almost start arguing with the tech team, which is like, a lose-lose battle, because you're, first of all, you're not building the stuff anymore. You've done it, but who cares? Like, they're not going to care because they're just like, you're not even like helping us deliver the sprint, for example. So I think I see that time and time as a mistake, especially, but then it's also if you know what you're talking about, that's also a very good thing to have, right? Then you build allyship with the tech team, and you can also, but you can also build like, interesting solutions with them if you're in that place to kind of work with them, especially if you have that background. So there's pros and cons, but I think, the best skill set or degree is to kind of be a generalist, because then you can really think from different perspectives, and you're not like tied down to just, hey, I'm just gonna only focus on this technical piece and forget about the business goals or the user needs. It's kind of like you're in that circle that we always see on LinkedIn, the Venn diagram with the UX, tech, and product, and you're like in the middle, right? So, because that's where you want to be, right? You need to understand all these other people in order to build great products.
Definitely agree. And I think for people who do not have a technical background, I think building a good rapport with your tech lead will definitely be helpful, because if you just sit down, start listening, have the ability or willingness to learn, you can just understand what's going in. So I think every team has its own set of basic architectural diagram, what goes in, what goes out. If you just go through it, that's, I think, far more enough than talking about it technically, because that's what you need as to be a successful product manager. You should know what's going in, what's going out. So go through the architectural diagram, sit with your tech lead, try to understand what's happening. I think that's more important rather than being technical or non-technical, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. And also like they're already doing that stuff. So we don't need to do
Yeah,
it for them, right? You need to do the product stuff that you're hired for. So
right,
I think there's an advantage. Definitely you would win the heart of that stakeholder, the tech team, if you have a CS degree, but
Right.
it's not like guaranteed, right? That you would win
Right.
their heart because you're
Yeah.
here to do product management, not be involved
A
in the
tech
technical
lead.
piece.
Yeah.
So I think there's like pros and cons on different scenarios.
Yeah.
But I do see that it is helpful, especially if you're managing a digital product, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because of the whole digital transformation that we're going through, and everyone is going, transforming their businesses to online, and also their products become more digitalized. You do have to, know how to use this technology to build these products. So I think that was sometimes I feel like the expectation of having a CS degree was an advantage, but it's not necessarily true. As long as you're a fast learner and you can learn stuff on your own and ask good questions. I think it's definitely possible to do it without a CS degree.
Right. And I also think there is a common misconception of what technical means. It does not necessarily mean you have to actually go in and code. That's not what they are expecting when they ask you to be technical. What they are expecting is, do you know what data is needed to even show this? So let's just say a login screen is there. There should be a username and password, and there should be a backend system that validates it. So that's the level of expertise they call as technical. You do not just write down or code the logic on how do you validate a username with the password. So I think that is also one common misconception that if there's a technical term, it means they have to code. So I think that's a thing that we should change as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's just trying to understand systems, right? It's not really coding anything. You have to understand how things work, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a simple way of putting it.
I know. And then there's also this other myth, like, do you need to have an MBA to be a product manager? What are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting topic. I don't have an MBA, but I have a master's degree with focus on product management. So maybe I'll just say why I did it, because I'm originally from India before I moved to the US. So I wanted to move to a new country, and master's was definitely a good way to make the transition without losing my job or finding a new job and things like that, right? So I think doing a higher education in a new country is definitely a way to get in there if you try to make the transition. And before I moved to product, I just had 2.5 years of experience in software engineering. So the only exposure of product management that I had was my immediate product owner and a product manager. So that was in a fintech space. So I didn't know how product management varies across industries. The points that I told you before, I didn't have an idea of how it looked or what's the level or where do I contribute? How does that vary across companies, industries, everything? So I didn't have an idea of what's happening there. So I used this master's program as a tool to make the transition or try to understand if product management is the right fit for me. So that's what I used, or why I did master's program. And one thing I also felt was this 1 year, 1.5 years, maybe, I think product management has become a buzzword, but previously I felt breaking into product was not quite easy if you don't have a direct product management experience. And I wanted to make a transition, and I felt having a master's would give me the credibility that, yes, I did in a good institution. Yes, my specialization was in product. Okay, I'm a good candidate. So that gave me some credibility along with my years of experience. So these are certain aspects that I thought doing a master's with specialization in product management would help. And talking about how it actually helped me, taking courses across like different areas, because I took courses in consumer behavior, negotiation, product marketing, product management, everything. So I just took different courses that would help me handle the end-to-end of product lifecycle. That helped me validate if product management was the right fit for me. And then when I decided, yes, product management was right, then I took courses that would help me specialize in product management. So that's how I figured if I have to get in, how do I get in and things. So, and all those myths that I told before, do you need domain expertise? Do you need technical expertise? This master's course helped me break all of those myths because I now know what product management is. I now have credibility. I know what to expect in my role and I know how to prepare for it. And my course has given me the necessary support to do it. So all of this, I would say, made me a good fit to become a PM. I would say this is also applicable for an MBA. If you utilize the right courses, the experience that you share, the network that you build. So all of this is what an MBA degree offers, and both masters and MBA offers. It's not that you do an educational course, you get all enlightened and be ready for a job. That's not how it works. It's the experience, the learning, the interactions that you do with people that you actually get with the course. So I would say it's up to you to figure out which way that you want to do to transition into product, but MBA or a master's would not just hurt you. It's just a different experience, a lot of learning. So if you think that's best for you to obtain knowledge, then you should definitely go for it. Yeah, I think I've covered why, how, and things of master's degree in product. So how did you transition, Sint? I haven't heard that story from you.
Yeah, I think I just did a lot of projects, side projects. I built products from like 0 to 1, like mostly on my own. Sometimes I did it as a freelancing.
Right.
So did a lot of research, validated the market, gather a lot of insights, and try to understand which experiments to run. So there are a lot of things that I did just on my own, and that was kind of, you know, and I would try to see how I could do that, you know, at a scalable level at a company or growing a product. So I also read a lot.
Right.
And I also try to ask questions in communities and try to grow my product sense that way. And then when it came to actually looking for a job, I felt like I understood what the posting was saying. I also, you know, had software experience, so it wasn't like a whole new beast. I knew what product managers did, not exactly, but I had an idea. So I would be able to kind of gather all of my learnings and also practice the interviews, as well as speak authentically about, you know, building like 0 to 1 products, because I feel like not every product manager gets to do that. So, and then sometimes, you know, it'll click or not with the interviewers, and, you know, practice makes perfect. And that's how I kind of, you know, landed my product management job, and try to grow from that experience to now like leading teams, as well as, you know, working on strategy. And so that's kind of been the journey. So there's been a lot of self-exploration mostly. And I think I did one point wanted to go to business school, mostly because I just wanted to understand how business was, especially because, you know, I didn't get to study any of that. But then I felt like there was other ways that I was going to learn on my own. And it would mostly, if I had to go, it would just be for curiosity and that, you know, learning space. And also like case studies and stuff. I think there's a lot of that at business school, I heard. But even to my day-to-day product job, I don't really use that much. So I felt like, oh, okay. When people ask like, hey, Sid, do you think like you need to have an MBA to be a product manager? And the answer is definitely a no, because it's good to have, but it's not like, you know, we're going to do cost analysis, you know, every other week, because that's not what we do. It's good to know about it when you talk to your stakeholder, like the sales team, right? So
I agree. So I think for everyone's sake, we have 2 different journeys on how to transition to product. One is masters, one is just exploring side projects, figuring out, self-exploring, and then making the transition. And I think one other way that I've also heard from people is internal transfer. So you build your own credibility within the company, look out for an opportunity, and then make the switch. So by far, I think these are the three ways that I've seen people making the transition, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, some people become a founder as well, and then they become a product manager later on in life.
Right.
Because you're still building products, from 0 to 1, but more at a committed level, not just a freelancer, right?
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I think we have a lot of myths to talk about, but from the chat, I see a few questions. Do you think, since we are nearing the time, we can just start looking into questions?
Thanks everyone for coming and writing all these questions. Ooh, I really want to answer the no question. How have you as a PM learned to say no, or advise you around, especially for people who are just starting out? So but I said a bunch of no's today. It felt great, mostly because I felt like I had a lot of the data. I think the best way to answer a no is to say no, not yet. And whoever is saying that, asking this question, and you're going to respond as a no, not yet, you should be very kind of strategic about how you answer it. And also kind of like, who is the audience? Is it your boss? Is it the client? Is it your teammate? That context helps, right? And based on that, justifying why you're saying no, not yet. And then just giving some sort of time to just let them explain or hear them out based on your response. I think sometimes like jumping on a call to say this kind of stuff is very helpful, especially in this remote setting. But how do you usually say no or not yet?
I like Simon Sinek's way of asking 5 whys, because a stakeholder or someone reaches out, they generally propose a solution rather than sharing a pain point. So instead of saying no to the solution, what I do is, why do you want to do this? When I just dive in deep with 5 whys, that takes me to a whole new picture. I try to dive in deep into it, then just prioritize accordingly. So that is one way that I say no or shift the direction of things into the right way. The other thing that I really appreciate about product management is, I think product management is the only job where you're respected or appreciated for saying no to the right things. So not everyone gets the opportunity to do that, but as a product manager, you are given the chance to do that. So it's really important that you evaluate the different solutions, different possibilities before you even say no. So with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility. I mean, by power, I mean the ability to say no, obviously. So yeah, these are definitely the two things that I do to avoid something that's not a good priority.
Yeah, so Priyanka asked, I love to hear an example of a no that I said today. One of our stakeholders asked us to rename one of the tools. And I said that, why are we doing this? Like, what's the impact that we're trying to make with this rename? So just more clarifying questions like you did with the scenic, the 5 whys.
Right.
And then once I understand that, I can think about prioritization, and based on that, I usually say yes or no.
Right.
So that would be one example. Renaming a tool. And there's another question. Or is there anyone that you want to answer, Shrinedhi?
I'm just scrolling up. I see Teresa Freemel's message. How do you as a PM approach when your users push back on a software feature you have worked on? Example, if you are in a new software rollout to eventually replace one another one, how do you handle negative talk because they are resistant to change? That's a really interesting question. Let me just talk about what I have experienced, because I'm still an early career PM, so I'll just talk about what I've been through or how do I handle that. So every time, so one thing that I have in mind is when users are used to doing things certain way, you need a very powerful feature in order to make them change the usual way that they are doing. So it's like you usually get up, go and brush. So if you want to make something that has to change, change the way that you brush, propose an electric brush, have additional features that will do that. So it's really important that you offer a counter or a feature that would effectively be happy for the customer to change. So that's one really important feature that you have to keep in mind before you make that or propose a new feature. So that being said, one thing that will help you is, instead of sending out a new big feature that would significantly impact the user behavior, do A/B testing. So that's why there are few focus groups that you can test out on few users who are loyal to you, as well as open to trying out new things. So try out all those contrasting or contradicting ideas with them. So that will definitely prevent a lot of backfire, I would say. So next thing is, I think I might get a bit technical here. So have a backup version of what your software version was there before. So let's say there is a new release happening today, have the yesterday's release on as a backup. So if there is any significant backlash, or there is a severe security threat or a privacy impacted with the new release, you can immediately jump back to the previous release, because you have made a mistake. It's fine to make mistakes, because that's how you learn. And if you just correct back, go back to the previous version, that gives also the user the sense that you care about them. If you make mistakes, you still put the users front and you just go back to the corrected version. So these are a few things that I do in case we do mistakes, or there's an unexpected backlash that's happening and we have to investigate it furthermore. These are certain things that I do. So what do you have in mind, Sint? How do you handle such situations?
Well, I usually like to run experiments. So I would probably not like your focus group. I would pick that like 20 users or 10 users, or even like a time frame to test something out, and then have, like, Facebook does that all the time, right? They try to launch something, they test it out for 5 minutes, 5 hours, and then if there's not any data that they're trying to get is hitting, probably they're going to roll back, right? So it's kind of the same as well. I mean, I work on a B2C product, so we have a lot of breathing room to do the experiments. So based on that, we can see what's working, what's not, and then we can make the right iteration in the next phase. So the negative talk is only if the data stinks, and it could be a quantitative data or it could be a qualitative data, but it has to be coming from an average amount of users, not just from one person.
Right, definitely. And I agree to your point on having a lot of room for a B2C product, because you impact the end users and you have a lot of room to test out and change, but that's not the case for B2B and hardware, because a lot of time and investment goes into getting that feature out. And if there is something wrong with it, that will definitely have a negative PR, significant loss in business value, and so on. So it's really important that you test out in B2C and not in B2B, and you put a lot of consideration before you send out a new feature or a backlashing feature for a B2B client rather than a B2C client, I would say.
Right, for sure. Another question that I often see and that's asked in this chat is, what's the difference between a product manager and a product owner? It again depends if the environment has a product owner and a product manager. Usually they don't, unless it's a big company. They might have those two different roles. If it's a big company, or if it's a company that has two different roles, you bet, like, the product manager is working on strategy and the discovery stuff, and then the product owner is solely working on the execution, as well as, collaborating with the development team. But again, it depends on the environment, right, and how they name these titles, and also what you're doing. So whenever you apply for a job as a product person, always please look at your job responsibilities, look at clearly what each thing will do, and obviously just to have an understanding, and also how many product managers are in the company, how many product owners are in the company, are there any business analysts, you can spec out all those things. Even a product analyst, how is a product analyst different from a product manager, for example? And you can talk to them, you can interview them as you're going through the job interview, just to get a better sense of what you're actually hired to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's spot on. You have covered my point as well. Oh, yeah.
I know we're like on time and there's
yeah.
all these great questions.
Yeah, just reach out to us on LinkedIn. We'll just share our LinkedIns. We are also join us on the Products by Women Slack community as well. We are there all the time. So just shoot questions our way and we're just happy to answer questions from our perspectives. Is there anything else that you want to add on, Sint?
No, I think these are really great questions. Thanks everyone for joining. I had so much fun talking about more product management stuff after work.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, let me know if you need help with anything. You can always ping me on LinkedIn as well as Shrinedhi. And our Products by Women group is amazing. You can get support. There's a lot of job postings as well. And also like all the cool things that every other woman in is doing. I've seen so many startup ideas from all these creative women on Products by Women. So
yeah.
And thank you, Namisha, for the invitation to speak on this platform. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. This was amazing. Thank you so much. Some really incredible insights. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good
See
rest
you.
of the day. Bye.